Okay, welcome everybody to Draemn's Guide to the Dungeon. As I'm going to be trying to call this series now, I'm going to be giving you guys some tutorials. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running through some useful maps and modes, giving you some tips, tutorials on how to do things. So first off, I'm going to start with Magus Quarters on Survival. It might seem a little weird that I'm starting with Survival. These tutorials are kind of in order, but not necessarily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip around to maps that I consider useful at some point in your goal of becoming better dungeon defenders. So, actually we're going to bump this up to Nightmare, and we're not going to worry about mixed mode right now, but we definitely want to turn Hardcore on, because Hardcore gives you a whole bunch of bonuses, and it's relatively easy to survive in a Hardcore game, depending on what level you're at, or how good your DPS is. But it gives you a big bonus, and the only downside is that, you know, if you die, you can't stay alive to help keep your build alive. But it gives you a lot of bonuses, and staying alive, you know, there's quite a few options to be able to stay alive. So now we're just going to start on a higher wave to get things going just a little bit faster. So I guess I'll do wave 13 just so I can get the pet. And we're going to jump right in and see what happens. So let's turn down our minimum hero join level, since there's really no point to have it that high with the stats that I now play with and the maps I'm doing. So first thing you want to do is obviously we're going to go about getting a build. Now this is a pretty easy map. Why would we want to play this map? Well, we might want to play this map because it's quite easy for lower stat players. So, you know, if you're in the 1000 stat range, it could be, or a little bit lower, it might be a place that you want to get some gear. Probably, you know, if you're lower, you're probably going to want other options that are better, but still, this can be an easy place to farm because there's not too much that you really have to defend. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a gas trap. Gas traps are immensely useful. So, in general, you know, when you don't have extremely high stats, pretty much you're just going to be using excessively a lot of gas traps. That's really one important thing to be, you know, looking out for. We're going to use gas. You know, I could use a proximity mine trap, but it's going to run out of charges pretty fast. I could look into using the Inferno trap, but they do so little damage and they cost 40 EU. You know, it's not really the best idea. So now, next up is going to be the auras. Auras are cornerstone to any build on Nightmare. They're pretty much mandatory. So, pretty much in general, as long as you have the DU to do it, you're going to really want to do your three main auras. Your Lightning, and your Strength Drain, and your Ensnare. And that's going to be pretty similar on all maps, because, well, the Lightning removes all the elemental immunity, so, the Strength Drain makes the ogres do less damage to your towers, as well as removing all enemies' immunity to your Lightning aura, your Ensnare aura, and any other elemental towers you choose to use. So they work extremely well. That Strength Drain is just, in Nightmare, it's so invaluable, and especially when you're doing Nightmare Survival, you really want that Ensnare aura to slow down the really fast enemies such as the Dark Elf Warriors, but also the Goblin Choppers. It does a massive amount of reductions to their damage by slowing them down. And of course the Lightning auras are used to kill just all the trash mobs. That way everything else is killed by your towers themselves. You know, it's kind of the whole point there. Thank you, Nimrod, for not, like, taking forever to give me mana. Okay, I don't need that going. So anyways, we are going to be doing some buff beams. Now, buff beams, cornerstone, super important. Trying to play without buff beams is very hard. Much harder than trying to play without a summoner. So, you know, we're going to be doing some buff beams. Now, basically, you know, my summoner's not the best, so I'm not going to be wanting to use my summoner as a wall. My minions, summon minions. So I'm just going to be using physical beams instead. I'm going to want to make sure I'm buffing my aura as well as buffing my wall. So I'm not too worried about the gas trap. It doesn't have to be buffed. It's kind of useful, but because of the corners on this map, I can get away without. I'm going to make 5, so that way I can place towers that are out of range of the ogre. Although I won't have too many towers left to place because, you know, this is all expensive DU-wise. Everything I've been building. There we go. Let's get this going. Where there's another one. Okay, so in general though, you want to, you know, physical walls, depending on if you're going to use minions as walls or not. you know, you will or will not build them. But definitely the buff beam is very, very important. Now, one thing is, I don't really have too much in the back here to defend against the spiders that are going to drop here. Usually your auras are going to kill the spiders, but, you know, I really won't have that luxury. But, you know, minions, they can turn around and they can shoot things. Oh, I forgot the reflect beams. Oh well. We'll do some summoning first, and then we'll worry about the minions. So, okay, let's go into Overlord mode because it's a lot easier to do a lot of different things. I'm going to build a spider minion. The whole point of the spider minion is basically just to web ogres. That's really the main point of the spider minion. When an ogre is webbed, he's going to take more damage, and I'm not 100% certain, but he might even do less damage. And of course, we want a mage minion because, well, one, they have good damage output, and more importantly, they can heal your other friendly minions when if and when they start taking damage. Okay, so, and now basically we're going to just spend the rest as archers because we want ranged units with this build. Right now you can tell there's nothing melee, you know, and the only melee unit you really end up using a lot would be the ogre minion. Everything else really isn't that great. Oh my god, I forgot my minions have such slow walk speed. So it's going to be hard to walk them onto the gaps in the buff beam the way that I like to. Yeah. Yeah, I've got godly armor on, so you know, I don't even have a complete set either. That's okay. That's armor. Okay, let's move you there. Let's build another one there, and we'll move it on right away. Okay, so really, more or less, you know, our minions should be able to take care of the spiders that are spawning. So we really shouldn't need to worry too much about the spiders in the back. Now, usually with a build, you would like to use some normal towers, like some harpoons, because they're very powerful, you know, or some other stuff. Go right ahead. Right now, the way I've built on my buff beam, I'm not really allowing myself to do that. So I'm just going to do something else, even though... okay, so, anyways, let's dump my mana somewhere because everyone's standing where I want to be. And we are going to build those reflect beams. So now, if you're wondering why reflect beams might be super important, well, needless to say that they are, is they prevent choppers from doing a lot of damage to your units, but they also prevent spiders potentially from webbing your units. So, you know, you're going to have, like, there's a lot of good reasons to use reflect beams. So, they just prevent things from taking damage is the main point there. Sorry, just talking to the guys in chat here for a minute. Hey, Penguin Finger. Survival Magus Quarters. A lot of people played a lot of Survival Magus back in the day, that's for sure. So anyways, we're going to continue, and you'll notice, basically, I'm surrounding my minions, so that way they can't really get webbed by the spiders, and also to protect them from any goblin chopper rockets that manage to find it their way. Also, they're protected from the ogre poison balls, as the ogres will throw that at your units when they're standing against the wall. So one thing that I also want to point out is ogres, they kind of always try and deal damage to things that are doing... They try and attack whatever's doing the most damage to them. So with the wall here, and the minions dealing damage to them, they're not going to try and attack the wall because they want to attack these minions that are dealing a lot of damage to them. And it looks like I've got some DU left, so I'm actually going to do, let's see, yeah, I got a mount. I'm actually going to be using some Proton Beams. These aren't usually something that you'd use too much, but for their DU cost, they deal a lot of damage, and they're good at taking out ogres. So... because, you know, I decided not to build the harpoons or anything because of, you know, I already had my minions on here, and I was like, I'm too lazy to, you know, move minions to fit towers on the buff beam. Just gonna do that, and then I'm gonna finish off with, I think I'm gonna finish off with some generic traps. Okay, so off we go. Yeah, usually I would go with some harpoons, but in this case, we're just gonna go with some traps. Let's see, my proximity mine trap. Definitely a great option for dealing a lot of damage, but the downside here is that it doesn't have a lot of charges. It'll continually need to be replaced. So, you know, I could choose to do that, but what I'm just going to do I'm actually going to set them up as anti-spider defenses, kind of. That way they won't need to be, you know, repaired as often. So anyways, now the next thing to do is to get out a DPS character. So I'm going to start off with an upgrading DPS character. That's usually what you want to do. Start off with someone who can upgrade, and just do some upgrading for the first couple rounds. So here you go, this is kind of a simple build for Magus Quarters. We used our general principles of, you know, a gas trap to stall all the trash mobs, aura stack to kill all the trash mobs so that your towers don't have to fight them, and then strength drain, of course, helping reduce the damage from the ogres, and then also allowing the lightning towers to kill everything. The Nair aura is meant to keep things like Dark Elf warriors from getting into your wall too fast. They also prevent Sharken from easily charging your towers because it slows them down. It really massively reduces the Goblin Chopper's damage. So you got a bunch of things there. The aura is super useful in Nightmare. You can get away with them in without them in other game modes, but in Nightmare they're kind of mandatory. And of course we've got the whole idea here is basically we want to try and kill almost everything except for the ogres before they even get to your wall or whatever your main, you know, your first line of defense is, and then let your towers, you know, be able to focus on just killing ogres, your towers that do the most damage, so your minions, your harpoons, and such. And of course the other thing is you want to keep an eye on your map. Every now and again you just want to bring up your map. You want to make sure that there's nothing weird going on that you need to go and defend and keep from getting slaughtered. So right now I can see, you know, there's a lot of ogres coming to the middle, but, you know, there's someone there, the wall's not taking damage, looks pretty good. Hey guys, how you doing? See there's a couple more people in Twitch chat. Yeah, it sucks when you're not doing Nightmare how slow enemies are, like they just barely come out at all. Yeah, King's Game has some good Wyvern spam, for sure. Okay, lots of ogres in the middle there. I'm not sure if I really need to worry about that yet. There's still someone there. I see it's not taking much damage. Although, I don't know if it's being upgraded. I don't think the buff beam hasn't been upgraded, so I'm going to run over here. Help upgrade this buff beam. That's super useful, buff beams. They just make a huge difference, for sure. Because they make everything touching them way better. Like, it just... There's really no contest. Buff beams are just simply amazing. Yeah, minions are pretty damn amazing too. But you can, once you get to high levels, you can kind of get away with just, you know. Okay, so let's check our map again. I don't see anything too worrisome. You know, I can do a flash heal, make sure everything's nice and repaired. Maybe upgrade these proximity mine traps just so they have the extra charges. When they're dealing with spiders, we won't have to deal with you know, as often than running out of charges. Okay, lots of ogres there. I don't want to be there. You know, I could survive there, but I don't want to be. So as you can see, you know, my stats are definitely higher than they need to be for this map. So it's going quite easily. Everything's dying really quickly. Auras, because I've got very, very powerful auras. But in general, you know, with the gas trap, everything would get stuck on the edge of the gas trap, and that would buy your auras a lot of time to kill them. And of course the Jinn, who can sell your towers, they get stuck on the gas traps and then they can't sell your towers. So that's a big, big thing there too, because they can be really, really frustrating to deal with Jinn. So yeah, just continue moving around the map and upgrading. Notice I'm not really worrying about upgrading my minions too fast. If I had some harpoon towers, they deal a lot of damage for one tower, so it'd be worth upgrading them pretty fast. But otherwise, it's mostly your buff beams and your auras you want upgraded. I'm only upgrading the gas trap out of convenience because I'm lazy, and that way I don't have to like manually select the auras every time once the gas trap's fully upgraded. So otherwise I wouldn't usually suggest upgrading the gas trap early like this, but it's not a big deal. So we'll just continue. Of course, always checking the map. That's important that you be checking your map. I got an archer trying to shoot me. That bastard. Kill him, monkey. So. And also these proximity mine traps, there's a chance that they might be able to help defend against the air wyverns that come in too. As long as they're flying close enough to the ground, they can hit the birds in the air. They just need something to actually make them explode, and then they're good to go. So it looks like we've got this wave easily under control. You know, there's lots of room left for the minions to kill the... That guy's still AFK? Whatever. I don't like AFK people. I think it's kind of rude. Yeah, monkeys never shoot the right thing. How true. So as you can see, the walls took pretty much no damage that round if you were paying any attention. So, you know, pretty good. We'll, during this wave, I might spend a little bit more time just watching things like that to point them out better for you guys. Okay, we got our 4th player yet again. Looks like everyone's having some fun. That's always the goal of the game. And there's my monkey. Not a bad monkey. Does a fair amount of damage. And more than enough to keep... Whoa, that poison ball kind of was annoying. I see that 500 token. Oh, he got it first. He so wanted it. Okay, so we'll just kind of continue upgrading, kind of keep checking on our map, making sure the ores don't get... The big thing is the strength drain ores run out of health really fast. So you have to make sure that you're constantly checking them for repairs, as well as, of course, as I said, if you're using proximity mines, you gotta check those as well. That's important. Upgrade's so slow, it's not worth the Jester jumping me mana. Oh, this guy... Oh, I see. You're in my stream right now. I see. Actually, I should join the Alchemy chat room. Just in case people want to join group chat room, in case people want to... Okay, there we go. We got that going. There we go. Now we're on to the point where we could definitely start upgrading the minions, because really getting most of your towers to 3 stars is not that useful. It costs a lot of mana to get to that 3-star phase. You know, usually you want to try and upgrade things kind of equally. It makes a lot more sense in terms of, you know, efficiency, mana cost, and the speed of getting your towers as strong as possible. Okay, so he keeps killing the ogres, so I can't really watch him at that wall. That's my problem. I guess everything's killing the ogres. They're just like too weak right now. My towers are too good. I'll just float over here. Let's see. Actually, I'll go into Overlord mode and see if any of them make it to the wall. I really don't think so. No, they're definitely dying too fast, these ogres. But in general, if they do make it to the wall, the whole point is they'd stand on this wall, and these minions are going to be out of range. At least they're supposed to be. They might not be, but if they are out of range, the ogres will stand here and they'll try and attack the minions, but there's something blocking their way and they can't reach, so they'll just stand there and they'll just be like, grrr, and they won't actually do anything. So that's very key when you're building survival, and even just regular campaigns, sometimes it's useful to do that. Of course, if you're using harpoon towers, they can take a lot of damage if you have a good amount of health, and sometimes you don't care if the ogres hit them, you know, and you can get away with it.